Hey, I'm Matthew Ma, host of the Truth About Real Estate podcast, and today we are talking with Jonas Bordo of Dewalty. Jonas is here to help navigate the complex world of renting a home or apartment and build a foundation for financial health. Jonas draws on his experience as a renter, a landlord to more than 100,000 people, and as the CEO and co-founder of Dewalty to bring pragmatic, new, and secret insights to renters and landlords everywhere. Excited to talk to you, Jonas.
Matthew, I'm excited to be here. It's great to chat.
Cool. Thanks for being on the show. And I look forward to having this great conversation about your real estate background. You've been in business for and doing real estate for over 20 years and have a really vast, dynamic outlook on real estate. And you've done a lot of great things in building this up. First off, can you tell us more about what is Dewalty and how did you get started on that project?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dwellsy is the rental marketplace. One of the things that I identified a couple of years ago is that Craigslist had been a tool that was broadly used across the country. 80-90% of listings were on there, but Craigslist died. Unfortunately, in the space, that might be a little overly dramatic to say it like that, but I was running a portfolio of about 60,000 apartments, and we saw our lead volume, which was mostly Craigslist, go to almost zero from them. And they had been our highest quality leads. Say what you will about Craigslist, but it worked. And when that went away, it was a huge problem for the industry, a huge problem for renters. And so we founded Dwellsy to really fill that space and provide that, similar kind of service, but on a much higher quality level. And rather than Craigslist, which kind of has its own agenda, our agenda is to really help this marketplace transact effectively, efficiently, get great data and insights that owners and operators can use to run their portfolio better and serve renters in an exceptional way. So that's what we're doing at Dwellsy. We're the largest listing platform in the country at this point. Over 13 million units list with us when they have availability. And our use by renters is exploding. It's growing at a crazy rate, which has been a lot of fun. It's great to manage those kind of challenges. So.
Nice. Let's talk about that too. But so for example, I've been investor, a landlord for many, many years. And yeah, I used to use Craigslist a long time ago. And yeah, I noticed a drop in that space. Like it was hard to get people to start looking at it. And I realized too, for me, for my location right now, I realized Zillow was one of the fastest ones in terms of just finding high quality renters who wanted to do the space. It was easier, quicker, it had the tools necessary. Even in the same space, there was Cozy, which is now apartments.com, and they got into it too. And for me, I actually haven't heard of Dwellsy, to be honest, but I look at it now, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Which markets are you guys in, and like which market did you start with?
Yeah. It's such a great question. I feel like the logical way to start this would have been to pick a couple of focus markets and grow from there. And that's actually what we tried to do. But the reality of it is that landlords are not necessarily focused on a specific market. There's a lot of big property management organizations. We've got folks like Equity Residential, Greystar, that have put their entire portfolios on Dwellsy. I shouldn't say nice. Greystar. We have parts of Greystar. We don't have the whole thing. But Residential, Pizzuto, a bunch of others have their whole portfolios on Dwellsy, and they're all over the place. And so day one, when we launched, we actually launched as one of the largest platforms in the country on day one. And so we were in every market. And now it just gets better and deeper and broader by the day. So we can serve any renter anywhere in the country very effectively.
That's really nice too. And then, when you started building this platform, what kind of challenges did you see between the communication between the platform, the renter side, and the landlord side in the management of this? And how did you guys simplify that process for everyone?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of things that make it difficult for people to advertise their listings today. Mm-hmm. The property management software systems, the Entradas, the Yardis of the world, the Buildiums, Appfolios are really set up quite well to share listings natively out of those applications. The challenges arise on a couple of different fronts. One, you click a button with most listing platforms and you just get a call from a salesperson who's selling you a $3,000 a month package, which if you're renting single family homes, if you're renting anything other than a high-end multifamily property, it really doesn't make sense to be looking at those tools and using those. If you click the button for Dwellsy, your listings just appear on Dwellsy. It's really straightforward. There's no contract. We remove that. There's no salesperson that you need to talk to. It is completely free. So there's no cost that you need to factor in. And our leads are the highest quality in the business. So you don't need to worry about us wasting your time with an avalanche of low quality leads, as some of the platforms out there do. So it's a great combination of things. We tried hard to remove all of the friction. Other places where we've made some changes to make it work well is, what your audience I think would be well aware, but a lot in the multifamily space are not aware, is that most of the rentals in the country are small format rentals. It's a single family home. It's a 3-unit building on the west side of Chicago. That kind of thing is is really hard to list on the existing platforms unless you want to spend a ton of money. And we're able to take all of those properties and show them on an even footing with the large multifamily in a way that makes sense for the renters, and renters can find genuinely what they're looking for. If they're looking for a single family home in the right school district, we can show them that, whereas others are not really set up to do that.
That's a good thing too, that you're actually looking at how to reduce the friction on your platform and to make it simple for and the best way to use it to find what you need as a renter, as a landlord, and just even as investors too. Because for example, when you look at Zillow, yeah, multi-unit space for me is not the simplest way to put it there. It creates frustration, right? And when you can get rid of all these frustrating items, it makes me want to use your platform more and more and more, because as it becomes easier, your mindset shifts. Hey, anything I have now, I just put it on Dewalty. It makes it so fast, easy. I find good quality tenants. Tenants like the results. They get what they want. It reduces questions and issues I have, like, hey, what school district are you in? Or what's the price range for the home? Or give me more details about the home. But if you can reduce that friction for them, they know what they want. You get higher quality leads, which is what everyone wants. And then you can identify. Because even for me on Zillow, some people message me like, hey, can I get that half price? I'm like, really? And then, oh, can you tell me more about it? But it's all there already. And like, like you try to get these, try to have higher conversion rates and make it simpler to reduce the attraction. Because
Yeah.
when you get 60 or 100 people messaging you for one property, I'm sorry, I cannot answer 100 calls on the same day. I try to, but there's no way possible that you can answer all of it. And that's great because the market, demand for the rental units is great, and even at a high price point.
Yeah.
But then as a platform, if you can start reducing some of these issues, friction, timing, then it makes it simpler and better for landlords, investors to manage it. And if you're a communication platform on Dwellsy, for example, especially when you have multiple units,
Yeah.
if it's easy to manage, and if you have the next level, when you start having management services, the payment platforms, the ACH transfers, the background checks, and everything, all in one platform, like companies are doing now.
Yeah.
It makes it simpler, and now you're locking them into your ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a natural habit now. And then how do you identify, make it better to get more quality leads for them to have a better way to gauge and even to meter where their rental unit is at in comparison to other units and how the performance is. So if you start adding performance metrics for investors, then they know, hey, I can just look at this platform as a secondary vehicle to say, hey, if I'm going to invest in a new area, I can actually look at Dwellsy, for example, to run my rental comps and figure out which is a good market to be in and how fast is the conversion. And hey, should I invest in here too? So I actually look at that too as a secondary note from an investing standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that you bring up a bunch of really good points. The data is amazing. We have a portfolio of data that's never existed before, particularly in the small format space, where we really have an unparalleled reach and inventory, and the data that's coming out of that is amazing. We just released numbers on single family home rents across the country, which to the best of my knowledge nobody's ever been able to do before, and we're doing. So that data flow is fabulous and is going to be a huge asset. We're actually on the cusp of releasing a new rent maps tool to allow people to look at rent across the country and markets across the country for different asset classes. So that'll be an iterative effort. But you make another really, really good point, Matthew, about the quality and the character of the inquiries that you're getting. I'll give you one of the very intentional decisions we made early on. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life was stand up a call center for my former employer. If you ever really want to beat your head against the wall, try that one. Not easy. But in the process of doing that and hiring up 50 or 60 call center reps, et cetera, I sat on a lot of calls, talked to a lot of renters, listened to a lot of people talking to a lot of calls. And one of the things that I took away from that experience is that a lot of the people we were calling who'd submitted inquiries didn't even know that they'd submitted an inquiry to us. And in many cases, we were spending $15, $20, $25 for each one of those inquiries. People didn't even know that they'd submitted an inquiry. And it's incredibly frustrating for all involved. And you made the point about 60 to 100 people responding. Like, you have a great listing. You have, a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of San Francisco right now. Day one, your inbox is full
Mm-hmm.
with inquiries, and your phone is ringing off the hook about that. And how do you manage that? And one way to manage it is to have a great quality listing that shows all the information. So people are like, oh, that's not the school district I want to be in, or, oh, they're not going to take my Husky, whatever the thing might be. If you're really clear on all of that, it really trims a lot of the looky-loos and people who might be, need questions answered to find out if they're good candidates for your place. And then the next thing is to really actually put a couple of hurdles in front of the renter making their inquiry. If you want to submit an inquiry via Dewalty, you need to verify who you are and that you're a real human. And then you need to go through a multi-step process to submit the inquiry and express interest to the landlord in a way that provides the landlord with good information about you as a qualified renter for the place. And nobody is going to go through that process and not know that they've submitted an inquiry. If you're going through our process, you've submitted an inquiry, and the data pans out. We've gotten multiple reports from multiple partners at this point reporting that Dewalty is their highest quality lead source by a significant margin, and that's the name of the game. That's what we tried to build from the beginning. So it's really nice to see it working in the way it's intended.
That's great to hear that too, because like I'm actually a tech guy too, so I look at these platforms and I see like what's going on, how that works, and what works, and then as you watch it grow, you're like, okay, this is actually a great company who's building something really valuable, while others are still struggling to grow. And then you start seeing different dynamic ranges of what other companies are doing. How can you incorporate that into your platform in your style and make it work efficiently? So when I think of like Dewalty, for example, I think of like, okay, let's say you're talking about rental market updates. People look at rental meter, right? Look at that website and they try to look at the rents and compare it. But if you already have that built into your platform, then it makes it even better. The next thing people look at too is, okay, from a landlord perspective, if we're not especially small mom and pops, we're not using Appfolio, for example. Okay, are you looking at Buildium? Are you looking at Cozy, Apartments.com, Zillow as a just general basic? Can one platform actually have this and host it? Like even for Zillow, they're not using a property management system inside. Like Apartments.com has it where you can actually say, hey, tenant, let me file a request for maintenance. Let me get all these issues, insert some pictures. How do you log and detail it, keep track of it? How good is the accounting on the P&L side for landlords? And how can you make it simplistic? Build a Appfolio style system, but think of it as on a bigger play. You're taking all the data in, you're having renters, insurance, having the landlords there, and then you have one platform to encompass everything. But your company becomes more of a data play company, which can house all the data for the rental side, knowing the market, each market segment, knowing the rental income for each housing, knowing the job income levels of each person. And then on the investor side, their portfolio, what they have, what's working, what's not, their performance numbers. And then even going further, you tie in vendors. Okay, insurance agents. Hey, insurance, we know these properties are paying X amount. You guys can do it better. State Farm, farmers, whoever, come in, advertise in the platform, support these people and have it targeted too, directly targeted to people who actually need it, and do a price comparison, say we can beat it. Then that goes further, right? And then on a higher level, you can take it to investor syndication play. Know your markets even better, and then know which ones to go into and which ones to buy and how the rents perform over the last historic data.
No, you hit the nail right on the head, Matthew. This what we're doing here is we're not trying to be property management software. All the folks you mentioned, great folks. We work with all of them. And I know firsthand, I have a friend who's trying to build a property management software system. That's really hard work. All of those successfully done that have my admiration and respect. It is a hard thing to do. We are not doing that. We don't replace any of those systems or try to build ours into theirs or vice versa. We see what we're doing as Dewalty as being that universal front end that can be leveraged by every renter, every landlord, and then we turn over to landlord in choosing Appfolio or in choosing Buildium or in choosing whichever platform they're going to choose, makes a very intentional decision about how they want to run their business by choosing that partner. And we want to honor that and respect that and let them run their business in the way that best suits their goals and strategies. And that means partnering in an effective manner with those organizations to provide them with great data and great analytics that complement what the property management software partners are able to do, because there is a marketplace dynamic by which it makes sense for everybody to be transacting in a single place.
Yeah.
There's not two LinkedIns, for example. There's one LinkedIn, and the reason for that is because there's huge value to everybody being in one place, and it's the same in this space.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're aiming to build. Whereas with property management software, there's always going to be lots of competition in that space, and that's the nature of it.
Yeah.
We really want to be that front end universal experience that can then work effectively with everybody across the ecosystem.
I agree. I think that's the smartest move there, becoming the ecosystem and the main platform of it, and then using your APIs to connect with all of them, sharing the data across each other, and then simplifying it. For me as an investor, I want my stuff simple as possible. I want to be on one platform. I don't want to deal with multiple platforms. I already have enough things to deal with. When you think about all the communication channels you need, like you need marketing channels, you need sales channels, you need project management, you need investment syndications, you need
so many things you have to do. Oh my goodness.
It's like, how do you manage all that in a day? Like everyone wants one shop, but I understand too, as a tech person, you can't have one platform that does everything in life because it doesn't make sense. You can only focus on your core beliefs and values that actually provide massive results quickly.
Yep.
So for you, that side of what you chose is actually the best one I would choose too, and just connect with those guys who partner, because everyone's different, runs a different style. But the easier you can make it simplistic for everyone, like Apple, like Tesla, and those companies, then the better it becomes, right?
Yeah.
That's the major thing. Like, how simple can you really make it? Because it's so complex to make it so simple.
Yeah. That is an oft repeated mantra. It's 100 different ways of saying it. I didn't have what's the old saying? I didn't have time to write a short letter, so here's a long one.
Something like that.
Yeah, making things simple and elegant is amazingly challenging. And we just had a team meeting with a bunch of demos from our engineers, and I think 80% of the focus is actually on removing stuff from the site, simplifying the experience, really boiling it down to its essence so that folks can have a quick, efficient, high quality experience and really get to what they need, which, if you're a renter coming to Dewalty, you want to find your place. You want to be able to see what's new since the last time you were there, and be able to find that place that meets your needs. And you don't want to have to talk to a landlord who is not going to take your dog, or doesn't have enough space in the place for your family, or whatever specific need you're trying to fill. They're busy too. They want to make good use of their time, same as landlords. And on the landlord side, we all, having been in those shoes myself for most of my life, we all want to make efficient use of our time and do things that make sense. And we're facilitating that as best we can.
That's good. I would say this from a QA perspective. I would talk about, okay, as a new profile, being a renter, how long would it take me to sign up, create my profile, set up my search, and find the right properties? And within that time period, what percentage of properties will I actually find that match my criteria, regardless of price range? And within that, the information that I provide to the landlord side, is it effective for them to actually make a decision without first seeing me, for example, right? But qualify me enough to say, hey, I want to see you. And what's a qualification percentage rate of people who apply, people who qualify? And then for the landlord, how long does it take them to do everything to get them into the lease signed?
Yeah. Yeah. So, on our platform, obviously it varies to some degree depending on how the renter moves through the process and how they want to experience the site. Mm-hmm. But you can be registered and verified on Dewalty within 10 or 15 seconds from coming to the site. You can be finding properties and submitting inquiries within another minute or so on the site. So it is efficient. But as mentioned before, we have introduced a couple of very intentional hurdles to make sure that those, that process is intentional on the renter standpoint, and that there's enough steps in that process to make sure that the information is created. So, we share information with landlords from those renters that it can be, depending on the renter's submission, as basic as, here's my name, email, phone number. And then the renter can actually choose to add a bunch of additional information about pets and income and credit score and other things like that they might want to share with the landlord at their option. And then, different landlords have different specs on what they're looking for in terms of, whether somebody's qualified or not. And it's up to them to reconcile that with the inquiry that's coming in. But we generally find that, we're hearing from our partners that Dewalty's leads are translating to tours at roughly 1 in 3 rate.
Okay, that's really good.
Which in my experience is a great number. The best I'd seen previously in my former life was 1 in 4 from another platform out there, and most of the other platforms were worse or significantly worse than that. I've seen 1 in 200, which is
That's hard. That's hard to swallow because that's too much work for a
yeah,
landlord.
yeah. But those who are in the larger multifamily world know that the front office loves lead volume.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, one of my responsibilities at Essex was running marketing, and I know we turned off one of our lead sources that was generating a huge number of low quality leads, and the front office was really concerned, and justifiably. They used to wake up in the morning with 20 or 30 leads for a given apartment, and now it got cut in half. And they're like, "Well, wait a second. How do you expect me to still close these rentals with half the lead volume?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, we've eliminated the chaff, and now you just have the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That should make it actually much easier to close your rental in that place. But it takes a little while for people to get used to that. Focus on higher quality.
Yeah. Even then too, here's another input. Imagine if you had all that lead flow coming in as a landlord, and you were a agency, a property management company, and now your platform Dewalty had that. It ties into the CRM, or it can API integrate to their CRMs, but you can actually pull all this data now, and they can start marketing to those people in the future for upcoming new listings, new leases, and build that platform. But that's the CRM platform side of things, right? Where you're shoving all this data of sources, potential tenants in the area. You know the income levels, you know what they're looking for already, and you build that into the CRM for them, and then they can use that as another lead generating pipeline off of your platform.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a, I have really mixed feelings about CRM. I'm sure we could go super deep into that if we wanted to.
Yeah, I work with CRM companies too, and I help them
Yeah.
QA their stuff and like beta test it, and I see what they're
Yeah.
building. It's fun, but it's a
And
lot of work.
there's great platforms out there. You think about, Knock or Funnel, or, any of the big property management software companies, Entrata and Yardi, et cetera, all have those as well. All have, CRM systems built in as well. And I'm of two minds, because on one part, yeah, of course it makes sense to stay in touch with these folks, to know who they are, and be able to, potentially rent to them again in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, like, we're not selling shoes here.
Yeah.
There's 46 million rental units across the country. Virtually everyone is unique, and each renter in each moment, their needs are also unique. Maybe since you rented last time, you got a dog, or you got married, or you had a child, or you're working in a different city or whatnot. The odds, and we saw this when I was at Essex, the odds of renting a second time to a renter, even for a landlord like Essex, I think I'm probably going to get this number wrong, but I think we had 2 or 3% of the inventory in the Bay Area. As an example, we're one of the largest landlords in the Bay Area. Even in that market where we had as much consolidation as anyone in the space, we were not renting multiple times to people. And it wasn't because they didn't like us or we weren't doing a good job. And we were getting great reviews from our renters for the most part. But it's just people's needs don't necessarily foot with the organization. I might buy the same pair of shoes over and over and over again. I'm not necessarily going to rent from the same landlord over and over and over again. So
Yeah.
I struggle with figuring out the right CRM approach in this space in the way that makes the most sense for landlords to invest in use systems.
And I agree with you too. It is really hard. And the reason I talk about it too is because, for example, there's some really good rental agencies in San Francisco, and they thrive off the database. And I asked them about it, and they said, well, here's how we do it. We have this huge database of all the renters in the Bay Area that we know in our market, and we know the income levels, we know the price ranges they're looking for in general criteria. But how they build it is a relationship business with these people. Like, okay, they have newsletters, they have events, they have rentals, and they know when for example, certain time periods in the year, they blast out to all the people, say, hey, I have a new property on the market, but I'm targeting certain people who are looking for this style home. And we know the chances are really slim that they're going to want to move again. And even as a rental agency, if I rented you one space, I don't want to take you from that space to another space. But they try to look at it too as, okay, well, I have these new opportunities coming up. They're high price points. Do you guys, here's what it is, and then feel free to take a look at it. But they find that their database is helping them get renters quicker. They can do it showings within 15, 30 minutes, highly qualified, know who wants it, and then see it and get chosen within a day. to do it. So they're basing it that way, but that's really specific, right? It's not what your company is focused on.
Right.
But you have the data source of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you've highlighted a very specific place where there is, um, there are these, and there's certain markets across the country where there are these rental listing sites. I think about Austin, Texas, or Chicago, where there are, brokers, for lack of a better word, who are basically building relationships with long-term renters and serving them over time. And it's a very different
Mhm,
perspective than if you're a property manager or landlord, where you're worrying about filling your asset
mhm,
and making sure your asset is filled. And the if you are um, a broker, the odds of you being able to serve that renter are much higher
mhm.
than if you are a landlord with only your own portfolio. If you're a
Yeah,
broker working with many landlords and you're focused on the needs of a set of renters, then CRM makes a ton of sense.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And for your
you're,
company, I would tell you to skip that part of it because it's not your main
yeah,
focus, but just the ideas of the whole platform and how it works for different people. And for
yeah.
me, as a sales agent and even helping leasing on high end listings, for example, one way for me to look at it is this: if I had a listing of a database of all these renters who are looking and they're at a high price point, I would ask them, "Hey, unfortunately, this house has already been taken, but have you
Mhm.
ever considered buying a house instead? With this amount of money, you can actually pay for a house at this price point, right? Would you consider that?" And then that becomes a huge new database of potential renters to buyers.
Yep. Yep.
But that's not, for you guys, I would say the main focus, of course, is helping landlords and renters and making it as simple as possible for both sides to have as least friction as possible
Yeah.
and to have better conversions. Like some people ask me, "Oh, can I have a dog there?" Yes, no, what weights and things like that. But if it's already filled into the profile, it'll automatically disqualify them. Okay, I have a 100-pound dog that doesn't fit in this small space. Then doesn't don't need to ask me.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
those
Save everybody
little.
the time, right? Of knowing, yeah, this is, if I could do a little PSA, landlords, please include your pet policies in detail in your listings, because the amount of time that is wasted, 65% of renters have pets, and the amount of time that is wasted by all involved as they try to figure out who can take their dog. Like I talked to somebody the other day with a golden retriever. It was an 80-pound golden retriever. I think that's a big golden retriever, but it's like, breed that everybody loves, should be the friendliest breed, but it's a big dog.
Mhm.
And, they were having real trouble finding a place because of the weight of the dog. If the dog had been a 70-pound dog, they would have been fine in most cases, right? But because it's an 80-pound dog and there's a 75-pound weight limit in a lot of places, and they didn't want to lie and fudge the weight number there. So they were in a pickle. And,
They telling their dog to go on a diet.
and if people are, if property managers, leasing agents, landlords are specific about what they're looking for, then everything gets so much easier. Leads are higher quality. You spend less time sorting through the chaff, and renters can respond efficiently with their time. And it works better for everybody. So I see these listings go by, and it cracks me up because sometimes you can list it on Dwellsy with as little as a price point and address in a couple of grainy photos. And I see some listings go by, and they often get a ton of inquiries. And like all the renters are just like, "Can you tell me more about your place?"
Mhm.
It's like it's a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating. You put together and do a little more work up front, put together a really detailed listing, you get much more efficient use of your time.
So couldn't you do this? If you think about that from a platform perspective,
Mhm.
what if on the top of it you had a little note or icon like an eye, click on that note, or something in display where not popping up, but in display, saying something like, okay, based on statistics, we know if you were to fill in the information about dog requirements, your likelihood to reduce the amount of chaff in there is 10%, 20%, in lead time, right? And saving this time. Or if the weight classes, anything that creates friction, if you can say, landlords, if the more you fill this out, the better chances to get higher quality leads faster, to reduce the time saved. Time saved is the most important for us. Then more likely they'll do it. But if they don't think about it, they don't realize it, they don't know, they just submit it, right? But if you can kind of give them some kind of nice warning, like say, hey, fill out the description, fill out information about this, and give them guidance, right? And even examples, because some landlords, I don't know what kind of description, I don't know how many, whatever, but the easier you can make it on your platform, the faster they can fill it out, then the better it will get. And if they can save templates or reuse templates for future too, it makes it easier.
Yep.
Because some landlords are newer, they don't know yet.
Yeah, no, 100%. In our platform, we have two routes to listing with us. One is through the property management software, and the other one is direct listing with us. And that's for people who have a small volume of units. I used to be a landlord in Chicago. I had 8 units that I rented out. And it's so every couple of months I'd need to lease a unit. And that Dwellsy direct listing process is really built for those folks. And you can, we prompt with all kinds of information that helps them improve their listing, as well as save the listing over time. So if it comes available a year later, 2 years later, you can just relist with the same information as a starting point. So that's, I completely agree. The challenge in the feeds is that we don't have the ability to push requirements up the feed, other than some really basic things like you got to have a price point, you got to have an address that verifies. We've got to know that you're a real company. There's a bunch of other things like that we're looking at. But being able to ensure good pet policies is not something we can do today. The other thing is that hinges on what you just said is there's this negative feedback loop of, wow, I just put a whole bunch of effort into my listing and now I'm getting a lot less leads.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of makes people's heads explode a little bit, because wait, isn't more leads better? Right. And it's not, because you don't have, if you go out to try to rent an apartment, it's not like you have 10 other apartments that you can rent to that person in that situation. If you're a landlord property manager, like you've got the one that you're trying to rent. Maybe a big community has a handful of them. But everybody except the lease up doesn't have a whole slew of them. So if you're getting a ton of low quality leads, it's a waste of everybody's time. But that's not the way we're wired. We're all, as human beings, wired in kind of a more is better way. So you're like, wait, I'm doing a bunch of work so I can get fewer leads? Why would I do that? And we're trying to educate people and trying to get them familiar with how the kind of inner workings of people's mindsets work in this situation, in ways that they can use their time more effectively. But there's a bit of an uphill battle there because of that, negative reinforcement.
I think there's a way to solve that. So think about this. If you look at Redfin and you look at the data, like when you see people say, oh, this is a hot home, it's favorited, it's viewed this many times.
Yep.
What happens if you could actually take the same data source, right? In general, this property you have on Dwellsy has this many views, but because you added in the pet policy, which it automatically disqualified this many leads. So therefore you have this many remaining leads, right? So you can actually show that in the display. If you show that in the property profile, it shows, okay, number of views or potential views or actual views that would have happened. And then the views that disqualify leads because of the pet policy is the reason why you have this many leads. But these are high quality leads now. You show the conversion rate.
Yeah, it's a really good idea. We've that would be a good approach to use. One of the things we've talked about is having a listing quality score, and then also an inquiry quality score. Which gets to how many people are looking at yours and ironically not inquiring.
Yeah.
Right. Because and why are people not inquiring? Or is it a high quality listing, which is great, and you're getting and you're eliminating a lot of possible inquirers as a result of the quality of your listing. That's good. Is it a low quality listing and you're getting lots and lots of people inquiring because it's a low quality listing? That's a bad situation to have. Being able to provide a kind of blended metric on that front would be a good thing to do.
So yeah, if you can provide that, because as a landlord, I don't know what's happening on your platform on the back end, but if you give me transparency on how I can improve my results, show me higher quality leads, then I'm more likely to do it, right? But if I don't know, I just assume, okay, well, it's either the website, it's not me, of course, it's never me, right? And it's not my description, it's not my cell phone photos that look dark, it's the website. So, but if you give transparency saying, hey, in comparison to the general market in your area is hitting this average price point per foot, this rental amount, and this many views, but yours is not, or it's doing better. Here's why. So like, for example, you think about other platforms like mint.com and how they do financial data, right? If you did that on a rental data side of things for landlords and even for renters, okay, you can do that. And then when you look at these data points, it makes it, okay, well, I love this website. It tells me everything about my listing. Okay, I see my photos are actually not that good, or my price is too high, or my description doesn't make sense, and I'm getting all these low scores. So the more you can put into that while making it simplistic again, then the better that people want to keep using and referring more people to the platform.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's on the roadmap for us. So
Okay.
it'll come in time. But as you know from your experience in the tech space, there's always more development needs than you have developers. So we've focused up front on marketplace health and getting people on the platform, and making sure renters can find great stuff they're interested in, and the listings look great and professionally represent the landlords. We do need to build out the platform as you described to make sure that landlords can access the information to help them make better decisions. So it'll come.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of engineering where people don't realize how much work it is. Because for me, it's easy to just tell you everything, but for you to do it, it's actually a lot of work to do it to make it happen. But at least
Yeah,
roadmap, you're running Scrum or Kanban, and you're breaking down everything, and doing your sprints. It gets a
yeah,
lot of fun, and it becomes fun, and you focus on the high quality things that matter the most first. And these other things are just, like the MVP, right? Minimal viable product that works fast and creates the hockey puck stick up. But the back thought of it is the ideas over time will improve, create better retention, create better opportunity for everyone,
yeah,
and
yeah,
become really
absolutely.
sticky. So that's the
Yeah,
fun part of it too. Another
yeah,
thing that popped in my head too, for a landlord perspective, like if you think about like Match.com, okay, how does it? It's like a dating site, but for example, renter and landlord, how do you make a match? How do you find the perfect fits? How do you do it without discrimination? But how do you make it sure that you're getting high quality leads that have good credit scores minimums? Because even people before submitted me really low credit scores that would not make sense financially for my landlords. Okay, well, but you're asking me to hope the opportunity, but at the
mhm,
same time, when I get 100 leads inside, it's really hard, and I'm filtering everyone out to try to find quality leads that match. Then that saves time too. But like, or even another part, you have great credit scores, you have great income, everything, but really you would tear up the house. Having rental profiles, having testimonials or reviews, but that's hard too because do they really want to show that? Renters don't want to see that review side of things. Okay, yeah, I tore up this house, I didn't give my security deposit, and I damaged everything, but I don't want the new landlord to know because I won't have a place to live.
right,
So how
right.
do you
Yeah,
figure that out, right? And the
yeah,
reference side of things.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, figuring out the reviews
Mhm.
aspect of
Yeah,
this world for both sides. Not just the landlord and knowing what they're getting into with a new tenant, but also for the tenant knowing what they're getting into with the landlord.
yeah,
I can tell you, having done battle with Yelp and Google as a property manager, it's all of those systems as we know them today are set up assuming a large volume of experiences, right? So if you have a Yelp site for a restaurant, they could serve 100 guests a night, 200 guests a night. Every one of those people could write a Yelp review. So you're going to end up with a review and rating that is pretty close to what people can expect because you get enough volume of visits. If you're a landlord who has, a dozen properties, you're only going to, transact with a couple of people a year. You're only going to have a couple opportunities to surprise or delight or disappoint people in the course of a year. And people are going to go to social media and recommendation sites when they have a problem or when something is extraordinary and really not in between. So, most landlords struggle with reputation management. It's really
mhm,
hard to do, particularly small scale ones. So it's one of those things that we have been extremely careful, and we
yeah,
haven't attempted to do anything in that direction because ultimately, lots of folks are landlording, doing the very best they can. They might have a disappointing experience with a tenant that has 364 great days of tenancy and
mhm,
one nightmare day. The water went out on Christmas Day, and oh my God, the landlord couldn't find a plumber, and it was awful, and it was awful for everybody. There's nothing that could have been done, but somebody flames on a review site, and that's a problem. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. That we have a truthful, honest representation of what's actually happening in the situation when we do get there. And so we may get there at some point, we may not. We'll try to figure that out in time. But I know everybody wants to know what they're getting into on a qualitative
mhm.
basis with people. Um, on both sides, and it's a hard need to fill.
Yeah, I agree. It's super hard. It's like what they say, like it's easy to get one really mean response versus getting seven good responses. Like 1 in 7, right? The chances is you never get the good good reporting, good testimonials because people
Yeah,
don't have time. They don't want to do it. They're just like, oh, it's good, whatever. I just don't deal with it. But it's so easy to get a negative response, and it can really be the renter or it could be the landlord. But it's not fair perspective to put it into things because you don't know both sides of the story.
Yep.
Like there's some really, really picky tenants and there's some really bad tenants, but there's some great, amazing tenants too, and great landlords too who take care of everything. And there's some bad ones or busy ones who can't manage everything, and they're maybe older or out of the area. We don't know, but how do you make it fair? That's really tough to do.
Yeah. 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 One secret that I learned along the way is whatever review site you want to be getting reviews on, everybody loves your maintenance folks. When the maintenance folks show up to fix something, everybody's happy with that experience. And so giving maintenance leave behinds that asks people to review at that moment, your likelihood of getting a good review is like 95% at that point, because usually the maintenance person has resolved the issue that the renter was facing, and whatever they may think of their landlord overall, they're usually pretty happy to see the maintenance person. So if the maintenance person asks them for a review, your odds of getting a good one are high.
That's very true. And yeah, because they're the ones solving it, unless they do a bad job, some handyman. But then the professional ones can do a good job, and yeah, they're making them happy at that time period, so the reviews go up for them if they ask for it. But most people don't ask for it either.
Yeah. So ask. That's the moment to ask, right? That point, or right after they sign the lease. That's the happiest and most excited they're going to be about the place. Is they've just signed the lease. They're really excited about their new place. That's another great point to ask for the review. But asking for the review and not just waiting until somebody has a bad day and writes a review is a much more effective strategy to manage your reputation.
Another point too, you just mentioned too, leases is another part of the whole ecosystem too. Like, okay, what kind of leases are you using? Are you using standard leases, your own made up leases, using association leases, or like realtor leases, like CAR, NAR, and like local associations like SFAA, apartment building ones, and then doing it across multiple states. Everyone has different locales and different city government issues to deal with, and then how do you handle that? For liability reasons, you probably let the landlord and tenant just deal with them themselves off the platform, so you don't have to be a part of it. If you add the e-signature within it and you do it, then it helps make it a little streamlined. But at the same time, how do you define the different lines of legality between it?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a daunting thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. It's funny at Essex. My old personal landlording business in Chicago was pretty straightforward. Everything was in Chicago. It was one lease that I used across my units. When I was at Essex, we were north of 50 jurisdictions, and each one required a unique lease.
Yeah.
In each one, and we had leases that ranged in length from 50 pages to 88 pages. I think was our longest one, depending on the local municipal requirements. Brutal for everybody involved to try to maintain that many unique leases across the platform. Incredibly difficult for us. I will say the property management software companies do a really nice job of integrating and providing local leases in each market. In some cases, not all of them. So that's one route to go. And the local real estate agent groups or landlord groups also do a nice job of providing something locally. And right now, we're actually trying to build broader relationship with landlord groups across the country to be able to support them and be able to guide people to using the tools they have available for their members. And one day I would love to have a library of tools that people can use. But I can't even imagine how many leases we'd have to have. To serve every jurisdiction in the country.
Yeah, too many.
The data we're now producing is 440 metros across the country, and each one of those metros might have multiple jurisdictions within it. So you're talking about thousands of variations that are each changing on an inconsistent, irregular basis. So
I think the way I would handle that is that in your platform, I would just say, okay, let's do this. Let's have a way to have vendors come into the platform and be of service, and you can rate them like Yelp. You can rate them on our platform and get the reviews, and they can advertise in it. But at the same time, they have to see the reviews and handle that and be one of the vendor partners you can work with. And from the landlord perspective, it makes it easier. Like, okay, you guys have some trusted CPAs, you have trusted attorneys, you have trusted maintenance people, project managers, real estate agents who can help me buy, sell, lease it out, help me handle the lease agreements, all on your platform. But that's also hard too, because you're encompassing another vertical into that, another pillar. But it ties into a different revenue stream for you and ties into a revenue stream for them, because now they can say, hey, you have hundreds of thousands of landlords here in my market. I can target and help them with my services if they need it, and they can tie into it. But
Yeah.
makes it easier for, rather than me going to Yelp, looking up everyone, seeing their reviews on their platform, talking to them, oh, do you use this platform or not? Yes, no, and how can we integrate it together?
Yep.
Simplifying the process for vendor services too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that gets to where we're really hoping to bring Dewalty in time, which is, it is going to be that marketplace where everybody is transacting. And as a result of that, there are certain things that are super helpful for everybody in the ecosystem to be able to have access to. And if we can provide those, regardless of which property, your lease isn't dependent on which property management software system you're using, or, how you're approaching the market. Fundamentally, if you need to lease a property, you need a lease that is locally relevant and administratively practical, and legal within your market. And so to be able to provide those as a resource to people, and be able to provide a channel for them to get the help they need, I think will be really a big part of our business in the years to come.
Yeah, you can create like all these moonshot projects you to work on, and like slowly break them all down and figure out which ones are the best ones to work on for the
Yeah.
year. And that
Yeah.
becomes a lot of fun, because like even for like one of the CRMs out there I work with, I gave them, even just as a paying customer, and they knew my background in tech and QA, I gave them 322 different line items, features, enhancements, bugs, and everything within a 1 year period. And they flew to my office multiple times. Like, wow, this is really good. I'm getting all this advice. Is basically how they built their platform to scale.
Great.
I gave that perspective, and like it just basically created a future roadmap for them to handle. And I think they did 80% of my requests.
Oh, nice. That's great.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's nothing more valuable, I can tell you firsthand, from the actual users of the platform providing input and help. There's no substitute for the actual user providing feedback with their deep experience with the platform. So good for you for doing that, and good for them for honoring that feedback. And
yeah, it was nice. Let's talk about that too. So how do you find your next rental property? But how do people find it? And what's the best tips that you recommend for them?
You mean for
Renters.
looking for renters looking for a place, or for investors?
Yeah. Let's talk about both sides.
Yeah. So what we know about renter behavior and kind of the search process and how it works is the overwhelming majority of renters start at Google. That is the entry point for them. So figuring out how to meet them at that point is, for the landlord, really important, right? They're starting off in the search. Depending on what they're looking for, they may or may not find what they're looking for there. If they can get to Dewalty through that channel, which we're working on making it easier and easier for them to get to us, then they can generally find a wide variety of options that might suit them. If they find one of the pay-to-play listing sites, they're generally just going to be looking at high-end multifamily. And if that suits their needs, then great. If not, then they need to look at other things. So the next thing they do is they ask friends, they post on a social media platform, Facebook or others, and they go out and walk neighborhoods and look for yard signs. Dewalty is actually selling yard signs now, in part because we've been successful thus far by meeting people where they are. And if you're renting a place, a really efficient way to get locally relevant, high quality traffic is through a yard sign. Sounds old school, but it still works. And so, that is another way that people are experiencing, just, going to the neighborhood they want to be in and walking the blocks and looking for places that might meet their needs, is probably the number one way people are finding places today in this post Craigslist era. Increasingly, they will be using Dewalty in the future, but at this point, we're building traffic very aggressively, but not yet serving the whole market. So that's kind of the renter process. And then once they find something they're interested in, then it's a question of landlord responsiveness and questions of how they actually interact with that landlord, and whether or not the place makes sense. And what I usually tell the renters is you need to know within minutes when something's become available if you really want to be in the running to get it. You mentioned earlier 60 to 100 leads. That's not unusual for a single family rental or small format rental. It's not unusual at all to get that kind of traffic very early on. So if you're the 60th person who's inquiring about a property, like, you need to move on. You're probably never going to hear from that landlord, and you're definitely not getting the place. So you need to find out quickly. And we actually have a product that helps renters do that, which is our Dewalty Edge product. One of the features of that is they get instant text alerts when new properties that meet their search screen become available, so they can actually be the first to inquire.
Nice, nice. You should make a quick button too. So I just press on a button, it automatically inquires, automatically sends a template of what I want to say to them, and my profile linked into everything to it. So it makes it easy.
No, we are not doing that. Back to what we talked about earlier,
I know.
people actually knowing that they submitted inquiries.
Yeah.
We are not doing that very intentionally, because we want high quality inquiries.
Yeah, of course.
But it is quicker to inquire the second time on Dewalty than it is the first time, but we still do introduce, and there are unique things about each place. And we give the renter the opportunity to express those things, but they don't have to tell us the income range that they want to share with the landlord twice. Once we've got that, and we can share that the second time without them telling us the second time. So that's the renter side. If I'm a landlord looking for places, it's really, you're talking about the MLS today, as and working with your local broker to help you for most of that stuff. We envision a future in which we can make a market on Dewalty for people to be able to buy and sell assets, but that's down the line.
That could be because you already know the data, the numbers for them. You can project it for them and even help them create an estimate, right? And then figure out, okay, here's a potential pool of investors who are willing to buy that.
Yeah, exactly. And are you interested in selling your place? Do you want to get offers?
Yeah.
We already have a whole slew of people who've expressed interest in making offers on places, and so that'll definitely be it's part of our build strategy for the future.
Yeah, I like that. That would be really cool. I would love to be a part of that to see, because people want to buy, especially bigger places too, in multi-units, and they can see these numbers that you already have. You already know everything.
Yeah.
So what are the top 5 things that renters are looking for when they're looking for a new place to move to? What are they looking at?
It's a great question, Matthew, and it's something that I see a lot of obsessing about. What are the amenities of the year, or what are people really interested right now? And I can't answer that question because it is unique to every renter. I have a friend who has 2 pit bulls. The only thing that matters to her is, will you take my dogs? Because the fact that she has these 2 beautiful dogs that are, amazing, loving, wonderful dogs, 98% of landlords will not take them. Mm-hmm. Right. So the only thing that matters to her is, will you take my dogs? Right.
Yeah.
For other folks, it's so unique to the person and the situation. And then we see really random behavior. Like I remember at one point renting a place myself where it was in the wrong location. It had the wrong space. The place had no clear windows, only frosted glass windows, but it had an 1,800 square foot living room. And I was like, oh my God, I could imagine myself throwing amazing parties in the space. And I was at a point in my life where that sounded really great. And I rented the space, which ultimately turned out to be awful to live in. And no way I would have ever gone out looking for an enormous living room or put that down on a list. But ultimately, that was why I rented it, was because it just felt like an amazing party space. I think my wife and I ended up throwing one party in that place, and that was it. But that was what won us over. And I feel like, any in the multifamily world, there's a bit of an amenities war right now. And the dirty secret is that nobody ever uses the amenities, but they do help sell the apartments. You picture yourself using that gym. Wow, this gym, there's nobody in here. This is just fabulous. I'd have this whole thing to myself. And well, yeah, you'd have it to yourself, but you don't actually go after you move. The pool is beautiful. Nobody actually sits by the pool. Right. And, so the reality of all these amenities is that they are massively underutilized. Smartest amenities that we've always gotten the most out of in, again, this is a large format community problem, is really flexible open spaces. So, you could have, use a space as a yoga meeting space, or as a, church group meeting space, or whatever. That seems to be the type of amenity that gets the most use in these places. Other things can be massive investments and get really light usage.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. I like community spaces where you can have birthday parties, you can host events, barbecues, and get-togethers and other events. And then that's a really great space to utilize if they have that. People want to go there and hang out, and then people want to eventually live there too.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of flexible community space is a great resource to offer. I've also seen, co-working spaces do seem to be popular these days, particularly in our work from home world, to be able to offer, a space within the community that has, great co-working capabilities.
That's
Just
another upsell too. They can add to their portfolio, having a space where they can co-work in creating that opportunity for them.
100%. Yeah. And if you do it right, it's a revenue driver, not just a free amenity. Uh,
Yeah.
Folks living there, on a smaller scale, it's really, it's just about, if you've got a 3-unit building or a single family rental, it's really just about, faithfully, honestly representing the place in the best possible light, and knowing what the competitive, characteristic of, I have a friend who manages an 18-unit community that is, candidly not that great to look at. Formats are not that great, not that super useful. But it's a block and a half away from a really vibrant restaurant district, and they just market the hell out of the fact that you can walk to great stuff from their place, and they do a really nice business with that property, because they know what they've got, they know what they don't have, and they market the heck out of the stuff that is really good about the place.
One thing you can do too, if you think about that perspective on a platform base, if you tie into a walk score for houses, like the landlord can choose to add in or turn on or off the walk score, the bike score, everything, and even turn on and off tie-ins to local restaurants, local schools, and everything, like great schools like Yelp, other things, and have it in the platform so I can see, hey, this house, I'm getting this location, I'm getting the school district, I'm getting these nearby amenities inside it, and I can see all in your platform. It makes
Yep.
more likelihood I want to choose certain properties based on these additional features.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a recurring question. We've tried a bunch of different information overlays like that.
Mhm.
And the irony is we haven't found that they've really materially increased engagement from renters,
Yeah.
or help renters really triage down effectively. Everybody seems to like it, but back to one of the things we were talking about earlier, just simplicity.
Yep.
Keeping it really clean and staying focused on what's important to people. I think people can genuinely look at something on a map, be like, oh yeah, that's really close to that downtown area, that's great, or that's really close to the on-ramp for the highway that I need to get on in order to get to my job or my school or whatever. People are very able to do that today, that kind of calculus themselves, and providing overlays that provide that information. We've tried a bunch of different things, including walk score, and we still keep playing with those. But we haven't found the right mix that people are like, wow, this is really super helpful, and I don't know how to get this anywhere else. So we keep trying.
Yeah, I think when I think about that too, I guess my question in my head would be, yeah, what you said makes total sense, and I get it too because I like simplicity, I like fast, easy, and then
Mhm.
I would start thinking about because I think about all these different things. How does Airbnb do it? What overlays do they put into the system? Which one's working for them because they scale massively? Does it make sense to add it to your platform? That's probably my next question I'll ask myself.
Yeah. No, they have done a fabulous job, and we have a ton of respect for the Airbnb folks and what they're doing, and have looked at their approach for short-term housing on a lot of different fronts, as a model. I agree with you. That what they're doing often makes sense. But it's funny, they're getting the web app to work in a way that is quick and responsive and whatnot, is a challenge. So the more you put in there, the more
Yeah,
load is on everybody's computers, and the more, and I'm our dev team and I joke about this. Someday we will have Zillow and Airbnb level resources to be able to apply. We're not quite there yet. So the fact that we are serving, access to 13 million properties within milliseconds is pretty exciting, and we need to stay focused on that core. At the core, what the renter wants is options,
hmm
being able to meet their need for options, and then help them triage down from there. That's the real core of the value proposition. So, how do we then add things that help them triage more effectively, and help them have a better experience? Always what we're looking for. What those are, we just keep testing new things.
yeah, and I say that's definitely the way to go. Like when I think about Apple, stick to the core focus and make it really great experience first and foremost. And all these bells and whistles like Samsung had versus Apple, I like
Yep.
Apple more. It just simplistic works and I gets everything I need to get done. And it looks great and it's fast as hell. And
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with any issues. The more
Yeah.
you add to it, the more issues you have to it, the more customization you have to it, the more I don't want to use it because
Yep.
time is valuable now, you know?
Yep, 100%.
Okay, cool. One last question too. What do
Hmm.
you think's going to happen in the rental market right now with 2022, 2023, and beyond? Like, what do you foresee with COVID, without hopefully in future becoming endemic? But what do you think the rental market's gonna happen?
Yeah, predicting the future is a bit of a mug's game, but I'll take my shot.
Yeah, just general.
Yeah, no, like, look, I think all of the demographics that we are seeing, the demand characteristics, for example, over the past year, single family home um, rents nationwide are up 35%. 35%. Um, Apartment rents nationwide are up 3%. Right? Massive bifurcation between those two groups, and I don't see anything changing on that. I see demand for single family continuing. People are looking for more space. They're working from home. COVID is still a factor. I don't expect COVID to go away anytime soon. We're going to be living with it for a long time yet, and it's going to influence people's preferences and decisions for a while. So those kinds of infill assets that are transit optimized and used to be the very best stuff available from an investor standpoint, I think we'll continue to see them lag in favor of other assets where people have more space, control over egress, your own door to the outside, and some outdoor space for your pets to run around. That kind of thing is going to continue to be disproportionately valuable. I think we're going to still see upward pressure on rents, in particular single family rentals. So I think that space is going to continue to be favored for the foreseeable future. We've seen this massive trough and recovery, in particular in markets like San Francisco and New York. But I don't know that we can expect that to push too much higher than where it is right now. Depending on who you talk to, we were seeing rents off as much as 40% in those markets as people exited the major markets and moved to secondary markets, or just took shelter in suburban places, or went and lived in their parents' house for a couple of months or years. And as they came back, rents certainly came back, which was welcome for everybody in the space. But I don't think that there's that much more gas in that particular area. I think we'll see much more push on the single family side.
Cool. Yeah, I look forward to watching it and see how everything progresses, and always just keeping an eye on the ball and trying to find, good deals for buyers, sellers, investors, and even for renters. Try to find good deals out there. There's opportunity on both sides of things,
Yep.
and this timing and needs are need
Yep.
based.
Yep.
All right. How do people reach out to Dewalty and learn more about becoming a renter on the renter profile side and becoming a landlord on that side?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dewalty is just dwellsy.com, DWELLSY.com. There's a quick link to list with us if you want to list your properties on the platform. If anybody wants to chat, I'm Jonas at dwellsy.com. Feel free to reach out to me. Happy to chat.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jonas, for being on the show. Everyone out there, thanks for being on the Truth About Real Estate podcast, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, Matthew.